We join Angel as he is flying and narrowly dodging two pillars of flame. Beast rushes forward, jumps off a board, and meets Angel in the air. Catching him, the two are surrounded by smoke, rendering them blind. Below, Iceman creates an icy guide pole for Hank to latch onto. Abruptly, Xavier flips a lever on the wall, which gets rid of the fire and smoke and congratulates Warren. Scott also voices his joy at Warren's recovery and return, while Bobby makes note of Calvin returning to college. Charles decides that they all deserve the weekend off, and the teens begin making plans. Charles stops Scott and asks him to return some books to Jean, knowing how he feels about her, and so that he can be alone for some experiments. Warren gives Scott a ride, while declaring that Jean must pick one of them for her affection. Back with Beast, he's thinking of his mutation and how he hides behind his immense vocabulary when Bobby tells him that their dates are ready. At Metro College, Jean and Ted are awaiting the arrival of Ted's brother Ralph when he shows up. After talking a bit, they head to the stadium when they decide to compete against each other in pole vaulting. Ralph goes first when the pole snaps and he hits his head. They rush over and check on him when he insists that he's alright. Later, at a diner, Ralph mentions that he used to work for Tony Stark, but left to start his own research lab. Scott and Warren show up, and Jean has them hurry over to him. Ralph invites them all to his lab, and they soon leave, but Warren decides not to join them. Elsewhere, Bobby and Hank are enjoying their dates with Vera and Zelda. Warren makes his way to a nearby club where he is surprised by an old friend by the name of Candy Southern, and they sit down and catch up with each other. At Ralph's lab with the others, he's talking of using Cobalt when he excuses himself and takes Ted with him. Unlocking a door, he shows Ted a replica of Iron Man's armor, but made out of Cobalt. Putting the suit on, he reveals that he left Stark Industries because he couldn't get the plans to Iron Man's armor when he activates his suit. He tests his recoil beam, which destroys part of the ceiling and flies through it. Returning, Ralph's head begins hurting when his brother says he should let Iron Man be the hero. His thoughts focus on the Avenger and he wants to fight him. Ted tries to stop him but is knocked out as his brother starts calling himself the Cobalt Man. Before he leaves, he turns his attention to the lab and destroys it. Hearing the noise, Scott and Jean investigate and witness the lab's destruction. Changing into costume, the two confront the Cobalt Man, and he thinks they are friends of Iron Man. Shooting a repulsor ray at them, the two dodge out of the way. Jean can barely hold him back when Cyclops kicks him from behind. He tries to blast him, but the villain dodges all of his attempts. The Cobalt Man shoots a metal block, dropping it on the heroes, then leaves to find Stark and Iron Man. We see that Jean and Scott are fine when Scott activates a signal in his wristwatch, which allows him to mentally contact the professor. Charles receives the message and contacts the others. Hank moves to grab Bobby, and they both quickly leave. At the club, Warren is telling Candy about the school when he receives the professor's message and quickly leaves to go join the others. Back in the metal box, Cyclops has Jean lower a hook, which he uses to get them free, and they head out to find the Cobalt Man. Outside, they find a van when Ted runs outside, and he says he needs to stop his brother, and the duo sneak a ride. Hank and Bobby meet up with Warren, and they all head to Stark Industries. Angel flies into the air when he is spotted, and the Cobalt Man attacks, but Warren dodges. Angel dodges another attack when Beast and Iceman show up to help. Hank leaps at him, but his adversary flies away. The Cobalt Man flies to a nearby bridge when Beast sees a van speeding towards them. The van pulls up and Ted explains what's going on when Cyclops and Jean join the others. Scott quickly comes up with a plan and they all split up when the villain takes another shot at Angel. Realizing it was a distraction, he sees Beast driving the van towards him and he blows it up as the hero jumps out. Under the bridge, Cyclops and Iceman sneak towards the Cobalt Man when he spots Jean and Beast running at him and he prepares to shoot again. Just then, the armor begins getting coated in ice and Cyclops blasts him. Cobalt Man tries to fly away when his suit fails from the damage it took and he starts falling. Angel quickly grabs him and carries him to the shore where the others rush to check on him. He doesn't remember anything and gives up the suit after learning what happened. Ted suggests heading back to the lab, while Jean and Scott hope that he hasn't recognized them in their costumes. We join the teens as they are gathered together to celebrate Bobby's 18th birthday. Zelda takes Bobby and starts dancing with him when Hank State asks him to the dance floor as well. Scott and Jean also join in together when Warren shows up with Candy Southern. He introduces her to the others as they all sit down and listen to the poet on stage. Swapping over to Xavier, we see him as he finishes the last of his experiments and moves to open the locked door in his lab. Inside is the Juggernaut, who has been comatose. Charles is resolute about reviving his brother as he remembers how he failed in preventing Kane from taking the gem of Cyttorak. He thinks about the combined effort it took to defeat him and wonders if he can save his brother. Bobby and the others finish listening to the poet when they all start hearing motorcycles and Jean yells to watch the windows. A gang of men break through the storefront and Vera tells the others that they are there for her because she refused to date with their leader. Warren and Scott watch, unable to use their powers, when Bobby slips to the floor and stealthily coats it in ice, causing one of the bikers to lose control. Another one heads towards Warren and Scott when they flip a table and he hits it. The man goes flying while Jean flips the helmet around on one of the other bikers, causing him to crash into one of his buddies. The last one tries to get away when Hank jumps up and knocks him off of his motorcycle. The cops arrive and arrest the bikers while the teens all check on their dates. Back in Charles's lab, he hooks Kane up to a machine, hoping to rid him of the powers of Cyttorak and to cure him of his hate. Activating a switch, Charles carefully monitors the process. Without warning, he feels a third presence enter Kane's mind and begin to resist, causing the machine to blow up, rendering him unconscious, and freeing the Juggernaut, who is now awake. He sees his stepbrother lying on the ground, then moves to put his helmet on. Feeling an energy surge through him, he discovers that he now has Charles's mental powers and decides to take out the X-Men. Warren returns home while being watched. He enters the house in costume, realizing something's wrong and flies through the home, but finds no sign of the professor. Heading downstairs, he's about to check the lab when Beast attacks, thinking him to be a burglar. The lights flip on and they see each other when the others arrive, and Cyclops notes that they couldn't contact the professor. Just then, Cerebro begins going off, and they rush to see what the threat is, only to discover that it's registering them. At that moment, the building shakes violently and Cerebro falls over, destroyed. Realizing they're not alone, they head to the basement when they hear their adversary as he turns the stairs into a ramp and they all go sliding down. Angel and Jean manage to catch themselves when he flies ahead to give the others time to get their bearings. Seeing movement, Angel flies towards a stack of boxes when they explode outward, revealing the Juggernaut. The X-Men are shocked at his appearance as he states that he will get his revenge on them. Cyclops decides what plan for them to use, while Jean notices that Juggernaut is more confident as she begins loosening his helmet. Beast leaps at him, but the villain glows with energy and shoots him into Iceman, knocking them out to Jean and Cyclops' dismay. Cyclops tries to hold Juggernaut back so Jean can warn others of his return. He blasts him as hard as he can when the villain reveals that he can read their minds and smashes the ground. The sonic waves disorient Jean as she falls and sees that Scott is unconscious. Juggernaut uses a mental bolt on Jean and claims victory. He then begins destroying the school when a voice stops him. The voice tells him that it is part of Factor 3 and wants to form an alliance, but that he has to meet them in Europe at their secret base. As he leaves, Beast wakes up and moves to revive the others. The others are already waking though when Angel finds the professor and sees that he is barely alive. Heading for the stairs, they take care of Charles and worry if he'll be alright while trying to figure out what to do about Juggernaut. Juggernaut is making his way through the woods when he decides to steal a plane to reach Factor 3. Back with the X-Men, Jean hooks herself up to the mental wave amplifier to find out why Xavier is in the coma when she starts to get a signal. Scott tells the others to quiet down as she is concentrating when Jean tells them that she is seeing things that happened centuries ago. She sees a young mystic traveling through Korea as he finds the Temple of Citrak. Inside, he is attacked by Zorak, the guardian of the gem, who destroys anyone who enters the temple. The mystic, casting a spell, seals the monster inside the gem of Citrak itself. Ending the story, Jean reveals the mystic's name as the Ancient One when Scott says it's time to go after Juggernaut. While the others take care of Xavier, Beast suggests using Cerebro to find the enigmatic mystic. Working together, they manage to get Cerebro up and repaired. Giving the data it needs, Cerebro begins scanning the Earth. The machine begins giving odd readings when Cyclops sees they've made contact. They then see the translucent form of Doctor Strange appear through the wall. Strange tells them that he is the Ancient One's disciple and tells them that only two can join him after Cyclops explains the situation. Scott decides to take Jean with him, and Strange starts to send them to the temple, but warns that they will only have an hour. As they begin to disappear, Cyclops tells them to try stopping the Juggernaut. Appearing outside the temple, they hurry towards it, and Scott begins blasting his way inwards. Inside, they find a scarlet light and, following it to the source, discover the gem. Clasping hands, the two begin reciting the spell Doctor Strange gave them when they are drawn into the gem itself. Trying to understand their surroundings, they are confronted by Zorak, who now calls himself the Outcast. Back with Juggernaut, he finds an airport, and we see the remaining X-Men head there to stop him. The X-Men watch as Juggernaut breaks through the electrified fence. They quickly come up with a plan when Beast points out that Kane is approaching, and they hurry into position. When their foe gets close, they tip the helicopter over so that the blades will hit him, but they merely break once they touch the Juggernaut. Kane begins ripping the aircraft apart and hurls it at the trio, forcing them to retreat. Switching to Jean and Cyclops, we see them talking with the Outcast when he sends scarlet discs at them. As they get close, they unwind and begin wrapping around the two when Jean stops them, and Cyclops tells her to throw them back at the adversary. She manages to fling them back, but when they touch him, they explode. As the smoke clears, they see he is gone and notice a glowing light. When they head for it though, crimson bands reach out and grab them. The Outcast's face appears in the tunnel when Cyclops blasts the band holding Jean, freeing her. He then blasts the giant face, which sends them flying backwards. They appear in front of him, and Jean checks her watch and sees that their hour is almost up when Scott sees the ticking watch is affecting the Outcast. Jean says she'll stop if he gives them the gem, but he refuses and she hurls it at him. Once it touches him, he begins aging rapidly, and they rush past him and grab the gem as he turns to dust. Returning home, they see Xavier is alright and hurry to help the others when Jean has doubts on how to use the ruby. Angel and the others, who are running from Juggernaut, duck into a wind tunnel and turn it on. When Kane enters, he can't resist the pull of the wind when he lets it propel him towards the X-Men. Flying into the blades, he then overhears them making plans. Moving quickly, the three heroes attack him and finish with Bobby encasing him in ice. Juggernaut, though, easily breaks out of the icy prison and moves to block their escape. Scott then appears behind him and, seeing the ruby and feeling his powers leaving him, moves quickly and grabs it out of Cyclops' hands when he discovers he can't let it go. Surrounded by energy, Juggernaut begins disappearing as he is drawn into the gem. The ruby then emits flames before disappearing, and they all leave to go home. When they arrive, though, they see that Xavier is gone and realize that Juggernaut was just a distraction to allow Factor 3 to kidnap the professor. We join the X-Men as Beast is repairing Cerebro again, as Factor 3 destroyed it when they kidnapped the professor. Scott tells Warren and Bobby to sleep, but they refuse and he yells at them when Jean manages to convince them. He then apologizes and Jean leaves to return to college when her roommate tells her that Ted called for her and she remembers how he suspects her secret identity and calls him. Ted picks up the phone and tells her that his brother has been kidnapped, that she needs to get the X-Men, and that there's no time to explain. She then contacts Warren and he hurries to grab Bobby. Moving quickly, they hurry to Jean to pick her up. As they arrive, Jean mentions how she heard Ralph had a new government project and wonders if Factor 3 took him. Ted greets them and explains that his brother's been kidnapped and taken to the center of the earth by a man called Tyrannus, and that he'll be killed if he doesn't do what he says. He tells of how his brother invented a new form of cobalt, allowing travel into the earth, when they heard gunfire and fighting outside. A man entered the room, commanded the capture of Ralph, and knocked Ted out. He overhears how Tyrannus plans to use the discovery to defeat the Mole Man. Angel asks him if there's any way to reach his brother, and he replies that there is and leads them to an earth borer, which will allow them to go after Tyrannus. He then shows them where his brother was taken when Iceman tells them that the vehicle can only seat 3. Boarding the machine, they familiarize themselves with the controls and launch into the pit. Heading downwards, they break through the layers of rock and emerge into a large cavern when they marvel at the size of the underground chamber. The trio hear a voice behind them, assume it to be Tyrannus, and turn around when a laser destroys a rock in front of Angel. They hear him announce himself as the Mole Man as he begins to shoot at them again. Angel flies forward and grabs the Mole Man, but he breaks free and summons his minions. Warren watches as 4 figures emerge and flies forward to knock 2 of them out. Jean throws one of them into a wall, while Iceman freezes the last. Looking around, they see that the Mole Man is running away. They chase after him, but lose him in a fog of mist. As they breathe in the mist, though, they begin forgetting who they are when they hear the Mole Man. Swapping over to Tyrannus' lair, we see Ralph as he finishes upgrading a giant android and activates it under threat of death. Ralph then demands to be released, but Tyrannus refuses and sends him to the dungeons. Elsewhere, we see Scott and Hank as they head to join the others in stopping the villain and saving Ralph. We see the Mole Man as he talks to the amnesiac X-Men, convinces them that they are his slaves, and that they will lead a giant diamond robot of his own to attack his enemy's lair. They begin questioning themselves when the Mole Man sees this and activates the robot to break their concentration. They then swear to fight for him as Cyclops and Beast find the Earth borer and see that it is undamaged. Taking the vehicle, they follow a set of tracks and pass through the mist unharmed. Tyrannus is alerted that the diamond robot is attacking as it destroys part of his castle. Ralph is brought into a control room as his captor activates his own machine. The 2 robots meet and clash with each other. Eventually, though, Tyrannus' creation emerges victorious. Jean and the others decide to try destroying the robot, and Angel flies forward, getting the idea to blind it. Grabbing some mud, he flies close and covers its eyes, causing it to lose balance and fall into a lava pit and explode. The tyrant realizes that Ralph sabotaged the robot when he rushes forward and punches Tyrannus, causing him to shoot the window when he is detained. Iceman and the others see the shot and hurry to Tyrannus. Angel gets there first, followed by the others, who quickly defeat them. Just then, Cyclops and Beast reach the Mole Man's lair, and inside, they hear him talk about the X-Men and decide to take him prisoner. He then explains that they are at Tyrannus' lair and leads them there, but when they arrive, Angel immediately attacks Scott. Knowing he's not in his right mind, Cyclops knocks Angel down and then uses a cure he was given to restore his memories. He quickly does the same for Jean and Bobby while deciding what to do with the villains. Eventually, they leave the two in the mists with no memories of who they are. We see Banshee as he is combing Central Europe in search of Factor 3 in order to stop them. He then finds a hollowed out mountain by using his sonic scream when a doorway appears. As he flies towards it, a giant mechanical spider appears, humming with energy. The spider blasts Banshee, causing him to fall off the cliff. He catches himself and flies away, escaping to a cabin where he proceeds to contact the X-Men to warn them. Switching to the X-Men, we see them searching for clues concerning Factor 3 when Angel returns, reporting that he only found where the kidnapper's ship was. Bobby gets their attention and tells them that they are receiving a message from Banshee. Banshee, just as he passes out, warns them of the spider when two figures appear. They contact their leader, who decides to see what the X-Men have learned while thinking of what to do with them. The X-Men receive the message, but all it says is beware the spider. Not far away, Peter Parker is riding his motorcycle when he decides to stop at a nearby stream. As he approaches though, the area around him begins to darken. Hopping into a nearby mill, he changes into a Spider-Man costume as he sees a sphere land outside. He decides to approach it when it opens up and reveals a metal spider which begins to attack him. He tries to swing away when the spider blasts the building, but he manages to fall inside. Elsewhere, Cerebro goes off, detecting a mutant, and the teens hurry to find its location. Checking the readings, they find the mutant to be in the nearby mill. Back with Spider-Man, the robot shoots its way into the building, and he dodges another blast while noticing that the attacks are getting stronger. Swinging around, he manages to land on the attacker's back. Grabbing its head, he uses his enhanced strength to turn its head enough to cause it to blast itself. The resulting explosion knocks him out, but he manages to recover quickly. Crawling out of the wrecked mill, he is spotted by the X-Men who attack him, thinking him to be the spider Banshee warned them of. Angel attempts to grab Spider-Man, but he dodges and webs up his wings, causing him to fall into the river. Beast begins climbing the wall when Spider-Man tries to explain about the robot spider when he leaps after him but misses. He notices Spider-Man isn't attacking and wonders if they were wrong about him when he is suddenly kicked from behind. Angel manages to remove the webbing and, moving quickly, catches his friend. Iceman tries to sneak up behind him, but Spider-Man's senses alert him, allowing him to dodge the attack. Cyclops then decides to try reasoning with him. Back with Cerebro, Jean, who stayed behind, sees that the machine is no longer reacting. While going through some files, she finds a note from Xavier talking about how he made it possible to contact Banshee through his headband. Adjusting Cerebro, she sends a signal to him, but he is unable to respond. Back with the X-Men, Cyclops asks Spider-Man about Factor 3, but he claims to not know anything as he backs away on the roof. Deciding not to take any chances, Cyclops tells everyone to capture him. Beast makes his way through the mill while Angel flies up behind him. Spider-Man tries to escape through the mill when Beast springs forward and catches him, but is quickly knocked away. Angel flies inside with Cyclops coming up behind Spider-Man and warns Warren to move. Scott shoots the weapon just as Peter swings on it, causing him to fly out the window and into the river. Rushing outside, Cyclops is joined by the others when Jean contacts them. She tells them about Cerebro's detection as Spider-Man pulls himself out of the water. Cyclops calls off the fighting, saying that he's not the spider that they're looking for, and Spider-Man mentions the robot, which Scott believes him about. Beast apologizes to him, but Spider-Man blows him off and they decide to head home, where Jean is just finishing locating Banshee. When the team arrive home, Jean shows them Banshee's location and how Xavier might be there as well. The team break up to get ready to leave when Scott tells Jean that she doesn't have to go, but she insists anyway, while noting his concern for her. As the X-Men are prepping to leave, Beast finds two burglars and attacks one of them. Moving quickly, he leaps at the other criminal. Meanwhile, the rest of the X-Men are coming up with a plan of attack when Warren asks where Hank went, and Scott tells him that he went to investigate a noise. Warren then double-checks Cerebro and confirms that they need to go to the Alps in Europe. Beast then appears with the burglars, and Scott decides to hook them up to Cerebro to erase their memories and send them to the police station under hypnosis. The team then try to figure out how to get money for the trip to Europe, as Warren's parents are gone when they decide to use the jet, only to discover that it's too low on fuel. Taking the car, they head to a welfare center to try to get some money, but as they are unable to answer any of their questions, they are forced to leave and come up with another way to get their finances. As they pass a construction site, they get the idea to work there, but Bobby and Hank decide to go to Greenwich Village. Warren and Scott keep lookout while Jean changes into her costume. As she emerges, she is spotted by a crew member, and she distracts him while the others change as well, when Scott pops out and tells him that they need jobs. The foreman decides to give them a chance and puts them to work. Minutes later, Jean starts using her power to lift steel girders to the top of the building when Angel flies Cyclops up there as well. Cyclops seals the girders in place and they ask him if they're hired. He turns them away though when he learns that they don't have union cards. Disappointed, they head back to the car only to be told it was towed away because it was parked next to a fire hydrant and that they won't be able to reach Greenwich Village. The man, Tom Regal, gives them a ride to the village when they see a box on the car floor and he yells at them to leave it alone. We then swap over to Beast and Iceman as they are putting on a show. Tom drops the trio off and leaves, and when he reaches his destination, leaves the car with the box. Meanwhile, Jean and the others see the exhibition and decide to join them when a man calling himself Meccano appears and threatens to destroy a nearby memorial library. Meccano then tells the crowd that the two X-Men gathered them all together for him and that they had better not try to stop him. Angered, the two X-Men move to attack the villain when a pair of nearby cops grab and tackle Bobby and he is handcuffed to a post, too weak from the show to break free. Beast examines his enemy before jumping in front of him. Meccano moves quickly and punches him in the stomach, dropping him, and he continues on his way to the library. Meccano breaks through the doors as Warren and Scott arrive to stop him. As they are about to go inside, the two cops from earlier show up with guns drawn on the heroes. Just then, the guns fly out of their hands as Jean lifts the two officers away. Taking the opportunity, Angel flies forward but is knocked out when Cyclops fires off a warning shot. Meccano, though, tosses a bookshelf at Cyclops, then runs away up a set of stairs and rips off the door to the audiovisual room. Angel then arrives and checks on Cyclops when they proceed to hurry after the villain. The villain proceeds to destroy the room when the two heroes arrive and Cyclops wants to know why he wants the library destroyed. Rather than answer, Meccano throws a computer at him and is forced to blast it. Angel then flies forward to try hitting the enemy again. Warren, though, is grabbed and held as a shield when he's thrown at his teammates. Knowing he can't win, Meccano decides to run away and leaps out a window to get away from the pursuing heroes. He is spotted by a man arriving at the library as he grabs the ledge of the building next door when it begins to crack. The ledge breaks, causing him to fall when Jean arrives and catches him. Meccano tells her that he surrenders, but she holds him until her team arrives. The suited man, who says he funded the library, demands Meccano to take his mask off, only to see that it's his son. When asked why he did it, he tells his father that he just wanted his attention. He turns to the X-Men to reward them, and they ask him for plane tickets to Europe, which he agrees to. He forgives his son as he hands them a check, and they leave for the airport. As they board the plane, they are watched by Factor 3, who claims that they will be dead before they arrive. We join a member of Factor 3 as he is rewatching the X-Men's fight with the Juggernaut. Finished, he asks his men if they are ready to attack the approaching X-Men, which they are. A few miles away on a plane, the teens wonder if they'll be able to find their enemies when Scott says they should be glad for the uneventful trip. At that moment, though, the plane begins falling from a downdraft. The plane is then rocked by an explosion, and looking outside, the teens see an egg-shaped craft from Factor 3. They wonder how they were found when the attacking ship decides that it will ram the plane. Back inside, Bobby and the others head to the door, open it, and jump out while grabbing onto each other. The attacking ship begins shooting at the falling X-Men when Scott raises his glasses, releasing an optic beam that destroys the enemy ship completely. As they fall, Scott sees that Jean and Bobby are gone when, not far away, she is slowing her descent, but it's not enough. Scott begins tearing Warren's shirt to release his wings when his glasses fly off, causing him to let go to reach for them. Jean sees he's about to hit a peak and is unable to help. Warren tosses a briefcase to Hank, who grabs it, then moves over and catches Scott when he sees the approaching rock. He screams for his friend to open his eyes so that he can destroy it. Above, Warren manages to finally free his wings. Jean sees him grab the two heroes and sees him begin to head towards them. Once together, they realize that they're still falling too fast when Bobby gets an idea. Using his powers, Iceman makes a slide for them and tells them to brace themselves. Landing roughly, Scott orders everyone into their costumes. As they finish changing, Beast notices a humming noise when Angel narrowly avoids a laser blast from a mechanical spider. Jean quickly destroys it by forcing it to shoot itself when two hooded figures appear, calling for their surrender as more of the spiders show up. The two figures demand that they join Factor 3 or die when Cyclops sees more of the spiders, called arachnoids, appear and sees if Hank can handle them. Beast bounds forward and kicks them off the cliff when Warren notices the others aren't shooting. Cyclops, seeing the same thing, blasts the ledge behind him, narrowly avoiding getting shot himself. As they go forward, they head into a foggy valley where they start to feel tired. Figuring it to be sleeping gas, Angel flies down to pull them out, but falls victim to the gas as well. They all pass out, the last of which is Cyclops. He is woken up later by familiar voices celebrating the X-Men's defeat. Looking up, the team see a quartet of former villains as they talk of how helpless they are when Jean realizes they aren't able to leave the glowing circle that they're in. Cyclops sees someone approaching on a podium while noticing a shadowed figure above him and demands to know where Xavier and Banshee are, but the man doesn't answer and they're told that they are on trial. The man, calling himself Changeling, says he is the prosecutor when Scott asks if he's the leader or just a pawn. Angered, Changeling says he is second to the Mutant Master, who speaks up and says they are being tried for betraying mutants. They are then shown Xavier and Banshee as they are in stasis, when Changeling says it's time to bring the witnesses forward. The Vanisher goes first and recounts his battle with the X-Men and how they stole his memory. Next up, Unus remembers being forced to surrender when Beast increased his powers to the point where he couldn't even eat. As Unus finishes, Blob claims to have the most at stake since he's been defeated 3 times. Lastly, Mastermind appears and says that the stranger turning him to stone was only temporary and that he's ready for revenge. As he finishes talking, the four villains begin yelling the word guilty. Changeling announces that they are guilty and to be sentenced by the Mutant Master. The Master, before ruling, outlines his plan for domination by destroying humans with a hydrogen bomb, and will start by killing Russian officials with a bomb that will be blamed on the US. He then tells how his followers will take over a missile base and launch nukes at Russia, starting World War III. He then sentences them to death, which is to be carried out by his second-in-command, who then stuns the group. When they wake up, Changeling tells them that the machine hooked up to them will turn them into slaves. Hearing the voice fade away, Cyclops tells Jean to raise his visor, but she can't, forcing him to come up with another plan. He has Iceman form icicles in his hands, and Jean levitates them over the machine where it melts, causing it to short circuit. The machine then releases them, and Cyclops has Jean try to remove the metal band on his head when they see a robot approaching them. The team are forced to scramble as it fires on them. Angel tries to distract it while Iceman freezes its flamethrower and Beast rushes forward. He crushes the Raider on its head when Cyclops manages to free his visor and blasts the enemy. Damaged, the robot is no longer a threat as it turns away. Leaving, they find the room where the trial was held, but see that Changeling and Mutant Master are gone when they hear a voice tell them that mankind was doomed. On a nearby screen, they see Mutant Master, who tells him that the missiles will launch in an hour. Angel yells that they're too late, but Scott swears that there must be some way to stop him, even from within the fortress. The X-Men watch the image of Mutant Master as they try to figure out who he is and how to stop him. As the image fades, they notice the villain doesn't seem worried when Beast suddenly yells that the place is about to blow up and that there's no time to explain. They make their way to the hangar when they commandeer one of the ships and narrowly avoid the explosion. Cyclops thanks Beast for saving them, and they head back to the school to await Mutant Master's next move. Meanwhile, in a hidden base, Changeling questions his leader, who threatens him. Changeling calls out the immobile mutant, though, when he shoots a laser at the follower, nearly killing him. Mutant Master sees how scared his underling is, as the mutant begs forgiveness. He moves on to talking of the weapons involved in his plan, including an undetectable floating sphere, and how mutants will rule what's left of the world. He tells how Blob and Vanisher are on a mission for him, and tells Changeling not to question him again. He decides to contact the two to make sure the plan is proceeding accordingly. Changeling learns that the evil mutant's plan is going smoothly, and thinks to himself about how he and the others are being treated like slaves, and how it will be dealt with. Mutant Master talks of how his second-in-command knows nothing, and how he will rule mutants while they rule the Earth. Back at Xavier's school, the X-Men finally locate two signals by using Cerebro. Splitting up, Beast, Angel, and Jean take one of the ships to one of the signals, while Jean worries about Scott. Arriving shortly in Europe, Warren flies up and sees a medieval castle. Inside, he spots a conference of military officials and reminds the others of Factor 3's bomb. Heading to the castle, Jean suggests crashing the meeting, then fighting the bomb. Angel flies Jean over the wall when they are spotted by a guard. Hank moves quickly and tries to knock him out before he can attack. The guard's gun goes off, alerting the others, who rush to the sound and spot Beast, who defends himself. Cyclops and Jean use the distraction to sneak into the building, where they are surprised to find both Blob and the Vanisher. Meanwhile, Cyclops is trying to warn the American colonel about the attack, but isn't believed and threatens to destroy their missiles. The colonel, though, yells for them to be locked up, forcing Cyclops and Iceman to fight their way out. Narrowly avoiding a burst of warning shots, Cyclops yells to Bobby that they need to destroy the base's missiles if it's the last thing that they do. Back with the others, Vanisher instructs the minions to attack them, But Jean blocks them with the door, and Angel takes them out on his way to warn the generals, when Blob stops him. Jean drops a concrete block on Blob, allowing Angel to get away and gather the goons' guns. Destroying the weapons, Warren takes out the last grunt when Jean narrowly dodges Blob. Vanisher appears behind Angel, but accidentally gasses himself when he is insulted, and Jean uses the same gas to knock out the Blob. Jean moves to levitate Vanisher, but before she can, he disappears. At that moment, the Factor 3 goons are revealed to be androids when they begin exploding. Alerted to the noise, soldiers appear and arrest the X-Men despite their claims of innocence. They find Hank in the prison, and he tells them that their only hope for escape is Blob, who can bend the prison bars. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Mutant Master talks of how his plan is minutes away from completion. We join Mutant Master as he is watching the two groups of X-Men as he thanks them for their help. Cyclops and Iceman are fighting when Scott has Bobby form an ice wall to blind a pair of planes about to fire on them. Heading inside a nearby building, Iceman freezes the guard while Cyclops enters and finds the air filtration system. Iceman begins freezing it up to prevent Factor 3 using it to gas the base, while Scott warns to be wary of an attack. Just then, tentacles appear out of the machine and pin them to the wall. Unable to affect them, they see Mastermind and realize it's merely an illusion. Breaking free, Cyclops goes to shoot the villain, but Unus appears and blocks the beam. Back in the Russian jail cell, Beast watches as Jean uses her telekinesis on a sleeping guard. Jean hurls him towards their cell, and Beast knocks him out while Jean takes the cell keys. Elsewhere, the generals are debating on killing the X-Men when Beast shows up and they yell to shoot him. Angel knocks the soldiers out while Jean finds the hidden bomb and lifts it away from the generals. Just then, Blob appears and knocks Beast back when he says the bomb has only a minute left. Hank tries to stop him, but is thrown back as the Rogue grabs the case. Unable to defeat their enemies, Cyclops retreats and has Iceman form a block of ice, which he shoots. The ice releases a mist, allowing both of the evil mutants and the X-Men to escape the soldiers and each other. The duo escape with their mission complete. Meanwhile, Angel tells Blob of the bomb, but is ignored. Jean tries to take it away from him, but can't, and tells him that Mutant Master probably made it strong enough to kill even him. Taking caution, Blob drops the bomb and runs. Jean grabs it and gives it to Angel. Warren flies into the sky and throws the bomb, where it explodes harmlessly. Moving quickly, Angel grabs Beast, who suggests finding the Mutant Master. We swap over to said villain as, angered that his plan is ruined, notices that Changeling is missing and that someone is coming. Using the ship's logs, Scott and Iceman find the hidden base when they are attacked by Mutant Master. Cyclops blasts him, but it hits a force field. Unus and the others show up, ready to fight, when the rest of the X-Men arrive to help as well. As they're about to clash, they hear the voice of Xavier calling on them to stop. He tells everyone that the real enemy is Mutant Master, who scoffs until asked why he's leading the evil mutants, and tells the others that he let the X-Men escape earlier. Seeing his followers doubt him, the villain yells that he's doing it for them. While pleading innocence, he reinforces his shield and is noticed by the others. Claiming they are no longer useful, he has his androids attack, and the mutants begin fighting together. At that moment, Banshee wakes up finding himself free and sees the mutants fighting when he is attacked. Screaming, he finds the right frequency to destroy all the machinery. Using it on Mutant Master's platform, everyone is shocked as his helmet is destroyed, revealing an alien underneath. The alien begs Banshee to stop while Unus attacks. As Banshee screams louder, the alien reaches for a button which causes all of the androids to explode. Just then, a second Xavier appears, revealing the first to be Changeling in disguise, and the original points to Mutant Master. They watch as the alien laments its disgraceful defeat as it kills itself to prevent being captured. Jean wants to know what to do about the evil mutants, and Charles suggests they leave in peace, which they all agree to. As they leave, Charles tells how changelings saw through the plot of the alien, and how both good and evil mutants came together to save the world. When they get home, Jean hands out packages to everyone that she has been working on. Opening them, the students find new costumes for themselves. Xavier tells them that it's time for them to look like individuals, and they're all grateful for the uniforms. We join the X-Men in the danger room, with Beast balancing past force beams. Bobby jokingly freezes the wire Hank is on, which causes him to fall and hit his head on one of the beams. Angered, he moves towards Bobby when they are summoned by Xavier. They find Jean on the way, and when they reach the study, Charles begins to tell them that Frankenstein's monster has been found, to their disbelief, when they realize he's telling the truth. He tells of how a research expedition just found the creature. Xavier, who looked at the monster in his astral form, shocks the team with a projection of it on the wall. He tells the story of how it was chased into the Arctic where it disappeared, and Jean asks if he might have been a mutant. Charles replies that the monster might be an android and the creator a mutant, and that they need to hurry to the museum as they are in danger if they defrost it. At the museum, Dr. Powell is caught raising the temperature of the monster by a colleague, but he ignores him. When questioned of the danger, Powell tells the assistant to leave him alone. Outside, Xavier and the others arrive, but the guard refuses to allow them entry. Xavier instructs Jean to knock the guard out when they hear a crash from inside, and Scott tells everyone to quickly don their costumes. The monster is free and begins crashing his way outside. Seeing this, Iceman suggests coming up with a plan, but Angel decides to try a frontal attack. He is effortlessly knocked back though, as the monster says he will not be followed to the land of ice again. Beast attempts to attack it, but is hurled back easily. Cyclops yells for everyone to move and shoots his beam, but merely slows him down when he is also attacked. Jean grabs Cyclops and pulls him out of the creature's path. The monster then releases its own optic beams and stuns the X-Men. Seeing them defeated, he leaves. A short time later, Xavier says they must find the monster and that he sent Angel ahead to scout. Switching to Angel, he finds evidence of the creature heading towards the docks. Xavier receives Warren's report, they commandeer a helicopter, and head for the harbor. They reach Angel and prepare themselves. Landing on the ship, the crew are hostile towards them when Beast starts knocking them out and the others join in. Jean gets the captain, who lets them aboard when Xavier rolls up next to her and immobilizes the crew, allowing the X-Men to hunt the android. Beast searches the hold when he is attacked and barely dodges. The others hear the fighting when Beast bounds out towards them. As he gives chase, a rope drops down around the creature. Angel tightens the rope, but is unable to lift him and the rope breaks. Iceman sees the monster free and rushes to fight as he tosses barrels at him. As he is about to throw another, Jean manages to stop him, much to the monster's anger. Stomping his foot, the android sends out a shockwave that knocks Jean down and sends barrels towards Bobby. Cyclops proceeds to blast him from behind, while Beast swings around to distract him. Just then, Xavier mentally tells it that he leads the X-Men and that it must fight him. The android approaches Charles, who has a plan but needs a few more seconds when Cyclops tries blasting it to no effect. Xavier manages to halt it with mental bolts while sending out a summons. At the last moment, Iceman shows up and begins to pour as much ice as he can when it begins cracking. The android begins to succumb to the cold, and soon there is an explosion. Defeated, Xavier tells the others that he probed its artificial brain and learned that it's from an alien race and malfunctioned. The team returned to school, lamenting that the ship crew's minds were erased, and Xavier tells them that they merely protected humanity once again.